As Israel continues to deal with the aftermath of October 7th, internal investigations into the military's response are raising serious questions about readiness, leadership, and accountability. The Israeli army's own report paints a picture of intelligence missteps, flawed assumptions, and operational confusion. Who will ultimately bear the responsibility, and what does this mean for the future of Israel's security doctrine? At the same time, the United States has opened unprecedented direct talks with Hamas to secure the release of American detainees in Gaza. These negotiations, happening in parallel with ceasefire discussions, mark a major shift in U.S. policy. What do these talks mean for the future of Gaza, and how could they reshape American diplomacy in the region? I'm Henny Saif. Let's get in focus. The October 7th Hamas attack exposed severe gaps in Israel's military and intelligence operations. The Israeli occupation forces have now released their own internal review, admitting critical failures, but stopping short of assigning personal blame. With several high-level resignations already announced, is Israel's military leadership prepared to take full responsibility? The New York Times reports that Israel's military inquiry has revealed a series of intelligence failures and operational missteps leading up to and during the October 7th attack. From underestimating Hamas's capabilities to misreading warning signs and failing to mount a swift response, the findings highlight a fragmented and overconfident security system. While the army admits collective responsibility, no individuals have been held accountable yet, though further reviews could lead to personal consequences for top officials. With mounting pressure from bereaved families and public demands for an independent investigation, the military faces intense scrutiny. To unpack these developments, we are joined by Mr. Ahmed Fouad Anwar, the expert on Israeli affairs. Mr. Anwar, welcome to In Focus. Sir, the Israeli occupation forces investigation admitted to major failures, but stopped short of naming individuals responsible. Do you think this is an attempt to shield top commanders?
Certainly, after greetings to you and your viewers, there is a division in the Israelis militarily and between the politicians. It's only internal committee that they may manipulated with the outcomes and getting out those people who should be held accountable. And there is a certain mandate of the political leaders that led the failure of the intelligence that contributed to the chief of Mossad and the chief of the intelligence. And there's a military failure and its a capability in confronting the attack or the release of the hostages. So they just directing the accusation to the chief of staff in order to resign. So Minister of Defense is getting the part of the credit in the framework of the competition in the far right wing, and it's been sacked quietly. And I think these pressures would give more responsibility for the person that is evading of the execution of the seized ceasefire deal and the acknowledgement of his responsibility of the 7th October's attacks and the following.
Well, several senior officers have already resigned, but critics say political leaders, including Netanyahu, should be held accountable. How likely is it that political responsibility will come into focus and maybe key figures such as Netanyahu being held accountable?
In fact, Netanyahu should be held accountable even before the 7th of October. The vicious policies in the eastern Jerusalem and in the Holy Mosque, as well as the settlers' crimes that committed under this cabinet before the 7th October that are documented, and therefore the accusation finger should be directed to this person who chose this coalition in the government and continued the failure and didn't expect it the 7th of October, but ordered to targeting the settlers and the hostages and the perpetrators of the Palestinian within 1948 were bombarded by the aircraft and tanks throughout 10 days since the 7th of October till the October 17. This level shouldn't be on the level of the Prime Minister. He should be investigated, and there is a camp is prepared of, by the minority to give Netanyahu upon the polls that he's trying evading of holding new elections and evading an independent investigation committee that should include the government partners, and he's trying to evade this responsibility. And even the following the several militaries are targeting, and now is targeting the judiciary consultant of the government. So he's increasing this enemies or adversity, and his own objectives of the war haven't been achieved yet.
Mr. Anwar, from the Israeli perspective, one key failure was the assumption that Hamas was interested in maintaining calm. How does this misjudgment become so deeply entrenched within the Israeli security establishment?
The Israeli side was relying on agents within the Gaza Strip, and showed that they are not effective. So they were also relying on the sophisticated security devices as well as the security wall, failed to confront the attacks, as well as the massacres that committed in several spots in the strip, such as in Jabalia, and the announcement of this, the resistance, all these matters that are significant to the Israeli society, that a path should be returned to, which is the Oslo path, unlike what happened in Egypt, that peace should be based on the land before peace. And it's the same happened with Jordan, but the greedy and the patience in Syria lands as well as Saudi Arabia that would expose the signed peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan to compromise.
Sir, even after uncovering Hamas' detailed invasion plan years Intelligence dismissed it as unrealistic. What does this say about the culture within Israel's intelligence agencies?
Certainly, there is a shock as the Arab summit that ignored Trump's proposals by presenting an alternative. And it is clearly that there is a 30,000 armed personnel in Gaza Strip of Hamas, and she cannot be disarmament unless using the force as the military army or the Israeli army has failed. So the Arab summit never assigned any intensities to dismantle the military capabilities of Hamas, and there is a committee being formed along with technocrats, but with regard to the disarmament of in light of the occupation and the expansion ambitions by Israel, I think that there's a rely to go back on the Oslo path instead of bargain of what has failed, such as the force and exploitation of Cairo that never provide any help in the past.
Mr. Ahmed Fouad Anwar, thank you very much, sir, for your insights. With resignations mounting and the demand for accountability growing louder, the October 7th investigation is far from over, and its repercussions could reshape Israel's security doctrine for years to come. Now, while Israel confronts its internal crisis, a diplomatic breakthrough is unfolding in the background. The United States has opened direct talks with Hamas for the first time in decades, aiming to secure the release of American detainees. This marks a dramatic shift in U.S. policy, raising critical questions about Gaza's future and America's evolving role in the region. In a surprising move, the White House confirmed that U.S. officials are now speaking directly to Hamas, seeking the release of American detainees held in Gaza. These direct talks, conducted in Qatar, are the first of their kind since Hamas was designated as a terrorist organization by Washington in 1997. Could this direct channel lead to a wider ceasefire deal, and what does it mean for U.S. policy in the region? Now, according to Al-Ahram Online, the talks, led by U.S. Envoy for Detainee Affairs Adam Boehler, represent a significant shift in diplomatic strategy. While the primary goal is freeing American detainees, the discussions have also touched on the possibility of a broader ceasefire. The talks are taking place in Doha with Israel's knowledge, though reports suggest that some Israeli officials were surprised by the extent of the dialogue. With the humanitarian situation in Gaza worsening and pressure mounting on all sides, could this dialogue lead to a larger political breakthrough? To discuss this further, we are joined by Mr. Ashraf Oqi, a political analyst and researcher in international relations. Mr. Oqi, welcome to In Focus. Sir, the U.S. has avoided direct contact with Hamas for decades. Now, what does this shift tell us about the urgency of the detainee crisis?
Let me first, there is a maneuvering in this time. Firstly, there is an escalation by the media regarding Hamas and the region, and laying down or figuring the crisis bigger than it is. But there are a political path through which the administration is trying to present its proposals, and it seems like there is a disagreement with Netanyahu, even if they show the opposite. We are before in a very freezing term, which is an interim path following the clarification of the political path after the Arab summit that unified the Arab world regarding the ceasefire and to move forward into the second and the third phases of the ceasefire deal, or to go back to different paths. But it seems that there is a negotiational pass away of the propaganda in closed camera and closed door that accepted by Hamas movement to undergo direct talks along with the United States. The Gaza cause and the Palestinian cause before League of Arab States and the mediators, and I think that should not lead necessarily to achieve some sort of a breakthrough in the issue of the detainees' release, as the USA wish from Hamas to provide an aid concession and hopes laid down by the Arab Summit.
Mr. Oka, now, while Israel was consulted, some reports suggest that they were not fully briefed on the extent of these talks. Do you think that this could affect the U.S.-Israel relations? Could it affect the situation on the ground?
That would affect, yes, the U.S.-Israeli ties and the clarification of Trump's stance that it is not necessarily to go in line completely with the far-right wing of Netanyahu, and whoever is looking to the nature of the internal agreement as the issue of judiciary's resignation of military officers and the visit of one of the opposition Israeli leaders to the United States, seems that there are some sort of some led interactions within Israel. And I think that there is an Arab stance issued lately that we cannot address a future political future in the near time, along with the presence of such figures within the Israeli cabinet. And I think it is also contradictory with Trump's interest in the region, and as citing implicitly that Trump's a bid to shake the region has come to failed through the Arab Summit and the previous summit, and also particularly regarding the displacement of the Palestinians. And we should search for an alternative that imposes a solution that's relatively acceptable. But internal affairs to get rid of Netanyahu and fall in such a government should be more quicker than movement would push Netanyahu to more crisis. And I think Netanyahu's government in the weakest positions due to the contradictions of Trump's vision in the region and the solid stances in the region, his inner capability of achieving success dealing with crises such as the budget or the Haradim issue, such a conflict that gained the nature of defiance that would interdict, or rather would lead to the speedy or a rapid collapse of the government.
Hamas has linked detainee releases to a broader ceasefire deal. Do you see these direct talks as the start of serious diplomatic engagement, or simply a tactical move to secure the detainees' release?
It is a tactic maneuvering by the USA to release the detainees. And let me say this frankly, for Hamas to put this file as it was in the framework of mediators and do not go through such a condition, do not surrender or to surrender its political future to the brothers in Egypt. Otherwise, different passages will hinder the Palestinian process and should not feel confident to the American administration. But I think there are attempts to include Hamas politically, but not to be the peaceful and security institutions in the future. So shouldn't open or get involved in regional relationship from one hand or international from the another hand. It would affect on the Arab region or on the national Palestinian project, and should get matters back to the last Egypt and Qatar in the framework of the Arab perspective and not through direct talks. This is not a healthy indicator that would jeopardize the Palestinian cause. Trump should also play and use Hamas in such a way as they seriously the nature of the Arab stances as well as the Palestinian stances, rejecting any form of liquid where some sort of communication channels Marzouk's talked about with the United States, and I think this is a serious matter. Hamas go back to review pass and get it back to the normal within the League of Arab States.
Well, so with these talks taking place, President Trump continues to issue strong statements against Hamas in public at the same time. How does this rhetoric fit with the quieter diplomacy happening behind those doors?
It became well known from Trump's behavior, and you don't know what is right or wrong or rhetoric. This should be affected with other partners that they wish to deal with Trump's voice behind the closed door. But in fact, Trump's behavior would compromise the image of the world of America according to his own plan, as long with the far right wing inside the United States. We should realize that Trump wanted to achieve a breakthrough and to come out by saying that threatened Hamas and they are afraid of me and surrender to my will. This is an manner in the framework of the international conventions and politics, but to Trump to deal with the Palestinian faction such as should be reviewed very well, and this matter should be readdressed. As I said previously, Hamas shouldn't fall in such a trap.
Mr. Ashraf Aka, the political analyst and researcher in international relations, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. As the direct talks continue and Gaza's future hangs in the balance, the outcome of these negotiations could have profound implications for the entire region. Unfortunately, this from Israel's internal reckoning over military failures and the grounding US-Hamas negotiations. Today's episode revealed how October 7th continues to reshape the political and diplomatic landscape. Will Israel's leadership face real accountability? And could direct US-Hamas talks pave the way for a wider political settlement in Gaza? We'll be following all these developments closely here on Qnews. But that's all the time we have for this episode of In Focus. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.